Welcome to the Beau Show. In my series of conversations at the libertarian-themed FreedomFest, I heard a lot of diverse perspectives. For instance, there were evangelicals there, and there were atheists, because both opposite groups want religious freedom. The evangelicals want to worship God, and the atheists choose no faith or religion at all. They find their faith in science, or at least what science can prove. This set up an interesting conversation with Eric Metaxas, host of the Eric Metaxas Show, and also the Christian author of books such as Martin Luther, Bonhoeffer, and his latest, Is Atheism Dead? By contrast, I also spoke with an atheist, Michael Shermer, who is the founding publisher of Skeptic Magazine and a former columnist for Scientific American. He's also the author of many books, including Why People Believe Weird Things and Why Darwin Matters. Without giving too much away, I just want you to hear their opposing views as I questioned both men about their reasoning and research. I hope you enjoy. Eric Metaxas, thank you so much for joining me today on the Beau Show. Love your pocket square, from pocket square to pocket square. Two dapper Dans.
I think the pocket square is vital, absolutely vital.
It's unquestionable in the man's closet right now. Eric, you have a book called Is Atheism Dead? Tell me how you went about answering that question.
Well, I didn't really set out to answer the question. I came to the title once I had the information for the book, and it's simply because of this. In 1966, Time Magazine had a famous cover article. It said, "Is God dead?" And the secular narrative kind of got locked in place in the 60s, where people said, like, we've kind of answered these questions. We think science is pushing God out of the picture, and so on and so forth. And what I have discovered in recent years is that precisely the opposite is true. In other words, not only first of all, you wouldn't even have science if not for Christian faith, which I didn't even know. But when you start realizing that it's Christian faith that led to the rise of science, the scientific revolution, what we call modern science today. So this canard that science is at odds with faith is preposterous. But this kind of got locked into the culture in the 60s. Ironically, evidence from science in most recent decades more and more and more has pointed to the existence of God, to the point where today, as I say in the book Is Atheism Dead, it's almost funny. You almost have to read the book to believe me. It sounds like I'm blowing smoke. The evidence is so overwhelming from science that nothing that's here could be here by chance. The universe, the existence of a planet like ours, the existence of life, there is zero chance, not a low chance, there is zero chance that it emerged randomly by accident and that we're just here. That thesis is dead. And so the atheistic thesis, the idea that says, matter is all that there is, which many of us have been kind of almost brainwashed to go along with, it's simply dead and false, and we need to kind of know the new evidence. So I said I want to put, some of the highlights of it in the book. So the question we have to ask today is not is God dead, it's is atheism dead? Because the new evidence is really astonishing. I mean, and that's just from science. In the book, I also talk about looking at atheism itself. Like, does it make sense? We can look back over regimes, whether it's North Korea or China or the former Soviet Union. What has atheism brought? Can it work? So there's a lot in it, but I think, hopefully I've written it in a fun way, because I want this information to be in the hands of everybody, because it's simply true, and we need to be aware kind of the new evidence. It's so overwhelming that again, it's funny to me.
Because it felt like, with atheists, that Darwinism became a religion.
Yeah,
to the extent that scientists, I remember watching this even in Ben Stein's movie, No Intelligence Allowed, where he got Dawkins to admit aliens might have put us here, that intelligent design was possible.
I write about that in the book. They come up, people are so hostile to the concept of God that they will just do backflips. They'll do or say or believe any crazy thing. And when you get to the point where you say, I think aliens brought life here, that still doesn't answer the question. How did life come about so that aliens would bring it here? You're not answering the question, because science has no answer for that question. But only today do we know that. In other words, in the past you could have said, well, we think science is coming up with an answer. But we've now had 7 decades since the famous Miller-Urey experiment, 1952, where they created some amino acids in the lab. That's a far cry from, life, but they were on their way. Well, they've now had 7 decades, and just on the issue of life, it's like we now know there's no way that it could happen. In 1952, we had hope, we'll figure it out. Now I think we can say categorically, we know that it didn't happen randomly. That is gigantic, and we need to acknowledge it.
But in the scientific community, is there still a stifling where you must start out from the unscientific premise that there is no intelligent design?
Well, obviously, because think about it. I mean, if you're living in China today and you say, I believe in the God of the Bible, they're going to say, you can't talk about that. Shut up. You want to keep your job? You want to keep... It's no different in the secular world of the academy and universities today. If you want to be, thought of as, part of the club, you don't talk about that. So there has been an outrageous stifling, and the fact that we in America would put up with that. We in the West are supposed to be about freedom and truth and inquiry. That's what science is supposed to be about. So the idea that science could be taken over by people who really are no longer doing science, I mean, you think of the irony of that. So I really feel like it's time to kind of expose this and to be clear.
Well, Eric, you also are celebrating the 10th anniversary of your bestseller, Bonhoeffer.
Yeah.
Dietrich Bonhoeffer was a pastor who tried to dismantle Hitler's Third Reich from the inside and paid for it with his life. What do you find, or what did you find most compelling about his story and how it applies today?
Well, it's horrifying to say that the story of my Bonhoeffer, if you want to know what is happening today in America, unfortunately, the story of Bonhoeffer, which I write about, will tell you this story. You'll get the parallels. Nobody has to connect the dots. If you read the story, you'll get it. And look, this is the world in which we live. It's a broken world. It's a sin-sick world where people with power often usually use that power to get more power, to crush those who have no power. We've seen this through history. But the point is, every now and again, you see it really clearly. What happened in Germany under the Nazis, Bonhoeffer saw it. He spoke against it. He was a man of profound faith. He didn't fear death because, as Christians are supposed to, he believes that God defeated death on the cross 2,000 years ago. I don't fear death. So he was bold and brave, and he has inspired many people, including people today, to say, I'm going to speak the truth. I don't care what the cost is. I don't want to live a life where I keep my mouth shut. I don't want to live like that. I want to be a free person. And so I think my book, or his story, I should say, it inspires people. And when I wrote it, I had an inkling that these things are coming to pass. But to see now, actually hard to believe it's 12 years, but it is really dramatic how very, very clear the parallels are. But the good news is that, to me, the story of what happened with Bonhoeffer and the Germans is a warning to us today. We can heed that warning. I mean, we're there now, but if we do what he did or don't do what the rest of the Germans did, we can avoid this. But right now, we're not avoiding it, and so I think I see the book as a warning. I see Bonhoeffer's life, not my book, I see his life as a warning to us from God to say, look at his story, don't do what Germany did, because if you do, you are now going down the same path.
I just, a couple weeks ago, Eric, I just finished playing Jesus in a musical at George Washington University, which was written by a Messianic Jew.
Not many people can say that.
They can't. I had a beard, my hair was different, because I know I don't look probably Jewish to a lot of people out there. But it's remarkable because it is the story of a Messianic Jew who had a vision and got to go back in time and see the life of Jesus Christ. And there I was up on a cross singing for 10 minutes.
Wow.
And it's written with the purpose of speaking directly to Jews.
Yeah.
You seem to say something in the Bonhoeffer story about Christians needing to stand up for Jews, correct?
Oh, listen, this is the irony of history, right? That Christianity is a Jewish religion. There's no way around it.
Right.
Not only was Jesus a Jew, everyone around him was Jewish. It is a fundamentally Jewish religion, not just ethnically, but it is the religion of the Old Testament brought into the new era, and he is the fulfillment of the Old Testament. So there is no way to parse that. It's just one arises out of the other. Bonhoeffer had the wisdom and the bravery to say that at a time when the Nazis were preposterously claiming that we're going to create some Aryan version of Christianity. Obviously, that's called not Christianity, right? But so the connection with the Jews, the connection with Israel, there's no way around it, and it's a beautiful thing. And I think that again, it speaks today? Because why is it that Israel is always in the news? Why is it that why is everything, hinging around the Middle East? It is just, it's unavoidable. It's beautiful. God is the God of history. Yeah.
Michael Shermer, thank you so much for joining me today. We have a lot of different perspectives at Freedom Fest. What I like about this conference is you get a lot of point and counterpoint. So first of all, I want to know about your book, Giving the Devil His Due. Tell me the premise of that book.
Well, it's a fundamentalist free speech defense. That is to say, the devil is whoever disagrees with you, or who you don't like, or whose opinions are abhorrent to you. And the reason they should be given their due is because, one, you would want that in turn if you were the outcast, canceled person with the abhorrent view. Two, it strengthens your own position by knowing what people who disagree with you think. And three, you might be wrong. Right? You might be partially wrong and you can learn something new. You might be completely wrong, and listening to other people allows you to enlighten yourself and so forth. And it's really the basis of all other rights. The entire gay rights, same-sex marriage revolution came about primarily through argument and persuasion, which requires people to be free to speak. And I don't just mean the Second Amendment, the government restrictions of free speech. I mean the general cultural norms of censoriousness, like on social media and other publications where people, or even on the job, where people feel they cannot speak up because they risk losing their jobs or harming their careers, losing their friends and family. That kind of censoriousness is natural. We would prefer to not hear from people that we disagree with, but right. We need it.
Do you think social media has become a factor in this censorship of free speech? Do you believe it's become the antithesis of free speech when it should be the platform for true unfettered speech?
Well, that's how it began. We dreamed of this, releasing the power of knowledge available to all people everywhere for free, in which we can have just this open dialogue. Hasn't quite worked out that way. Yeah. But it's not completely gone the other direction. I mean, we do have the so-called intellectual dark web, of which I'm a part. That is this kind of alternative media where podcasts have become huge, where people like Barry Weiss, my friend who left the New York Times to start our own media company,
yep.
Joe Rogan, Jordan Peterson, Sam Harris, myself, others that have just kind of pioneered and got out on their own with the principle of we're interested in the truth, whatever it is. We're not going to allow ourselves to be corrupted by politics and ideology. So I'm encouraged by that and the rise of fact-checking sites that in real time fact-check politicians' speech. There seems to be a market for that. So I think it's not all is lost. I do worry about the cancel culture of young people, the fear of missing out, the fear of being left out amongst teenagers that seems to be causing harm. I don't see the damage or the harm in general for social media companies. I don't think they need to be regulated and broken up by the government because of their threat. But on the other hand, we should pay attention to what's going on there.
So you talk about the devil being symbolic of anyone who disagrees with you. Do you believe at all in any sort of spiritual warfare or a devil in some spiritual realm?
No, of course not. No, I'm a materialist. I believe that there is an objective reality and we can know it, and that there's no such thing as the supernatural or the paranormal. Those are just words we use to describe things we don't quite understand yet.
Okay.
Right? Just mysteries we don't know.
So let's go to that topic of religion and faith. Do you think that scientists today as a whole are truly curious in perhaps exploring the supernatural, or do you believe that they have accepted a certain religion, if you will, that would prevent that type of exploration?
Yeah, interesting question. That is the big philosophical question about the philosophy of science.
Yeah.
We begin with the assumption of a material world and that there is no spiritual world, or that is to say, the words paranormal and supernatural, by definition, means it's outside of the normal. It's outside of the natural. Okay, if that's true, then how can you get at it? How could you measure it? Because this is what science does. It measures things.
Right.
It tests things. So if you're saying, well, God or ghosts or demons are outside of the physical world, then how do they reach into the world to stir the particles in some way? How does the ghost know to turn right at the hallway and open the door and spook somebody in bed? How does the demon harass somebody in their beds at night? It's kind of a non-physical entity interacting with a physical stuff. How does that happen? There's no good answer for that. So really, by definition, if you're doing science, it has to be something material, energy, matter, but not something outside of that world, because what would that even be?